I used to think the cruelest thing was being forgotten. But it's worse when the people you love remember you and still plot against you. I was kneeling by the fireplace that night, brushing ash from the edge of the hearth, when I heard her voice, low, sharp, slicing through the quiet. "We'll kick him out after Christmas." It landed like a punch to the ribs. I didn't move, I didn't blink, just kept my back turned, hand on the iron poker. My son didn't respond right away. Then came his answer, casual as if they were deciding on a restaurant. "Yeah, we'll say it's time he got a place with support. He'll get over it." And then laughter, soft, intimate, the kind people share when they're in on something ugly. They didn't know I was right there, just a few steps away. They didn't know I'd heard everything. Or maybe they didn't care. I stayed crouched in front of the fire, eyes fixed on the embers. My fingers curled around the poker so tight I felt the metal edge press into my skin. This was my house. I built it in '87, poured concrete with my own hands, chose the beams, planted every tree outside. And after Barbara passed, every corner of this place became memory, sacred. Now it was just an asset to them, a line item. They thought they were being clever, waiting until the holidays were over, letting me light the fire, cook the roast, wrap the gifts, all while planning my eviction. I wish someone had warned me. Not about thieves or strangers, but about what happens when love turns into leverage. If anyone's listening, don't make the mistake I did. I trusted my son. When his business collapsed, I opened this home. When she lost her job, I said, "Come, stay as long as you need." Now I was just a burden with a bedroom. Later that night, I walked into the kitchen. She was rinsing wine glasses. "Lovely evening," I said. My voice didn't tremble. She smiled. "It really was. You always make the holidays so warm." I nodded. "You heading to bed soon?" "In a bit," I said, opening the pantry. "Okay, good night then," she chirped, wiping her hands. I watched her walk away like nothing had been said. The clock ticked into midnight. Christmas Day. I returned to the fireplace, knelt again. The flames had settled into a soft orange flicker. I lifted the poker, stirred the coals gently, then leaned forward and whispered, "So that's how it's going to be." I watched the last flame dance, then die. I hadn't opened the safe since Barbara died. It still smelled like her perfume somehow, or maybe that was just memory playing tricks again. The dial clicked under my fingers as I spun it left, then right, pausing with each turn like I was waiting for her voice to say, "Careful now, don't forget the middle number." When the door finally opened, I saw it, the thick envelope labeled deed property, yellowed a bit at the edges, still whole, still mine, or so I'd told myself. I carried it to the desk. My hands were steadier than I expected. Inside, the words stared back at me. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship. My son's name, typed in bold right beneath mine. I remembered the day I signed it. Barbara had only been gone 3 months. I was still sleeping with her robe folded on her pillow. My son had come over with soup, said he'd talked to someone smart, and that it'd be easier for everyone if we just got the paperwork sorted now, just in case something happened to me. "Probate's a mess," he'd said. "This way there's no confusion later." I didn't argue. I wanted to believe he was protecting me. My lawyer, Greg, had warned me years before. Don't put anyone else on the deed unless you're ready to give up half the control. But that was Greg being paranoid, right? Now I saw it for what it was. I hadn't passed him the torch. I'd handed him the matches. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Greg answered after 2 rings. "Still breathing, old man," he said with a chuckle. "Barely," I muttered. "Greg, I need a favor, quiet one." We met that afternoon in his garage, just like the old days when we'd fix up motorcycles and drink too much soda. I showed him the deed. Joint tenancy, he said, squinting. So technically he owns half now. You die, he gets the rest. No court involved. What if I'm not dead? I asked. Greg's mouth tightened. Then he can't do anything major without your signature. But if he tries and you don't fight it, silence is consent in court. Can it be undone? He paused. Maybe. Depends on what you signed, how, and if you were in the right frame of mind. Was this after Barbara passed? 3 months after. He gave me a long look. We might have a case, especially if you were grieving, but it'll take some finesse. I nodded. Just tell me what I need to do, quietly. We shook hands. As I drove home, I passed the oak tree Barbara and I planted the year we moved in. She used to hang wind chimes from it. Now it just stood there, bare, brittle, forgotten. I pulled into the driveway and saw their car parked sideways again, like they owned the place. And on the passenger seat, a glossy brochure from a real estate agency. I didn't park behind them. I drove a block further and stopped. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. The eggs hissed in the pan as I flipped them gently, pretending I hadn't heard my own son plan my eviction with the woman now humming in my kitchen. She moved around like she owned the place. Juice? She asked, holding the glass pitcher halfway through a pour. Sure, I said, my voice level. I took the seat across from my son, who scrolled lazily through his phone. You sleep okay, Dad? He asked, not looking up. Well enough. I sipped the juice. It tasted too sweet, or maybe that was just the bitterness behind my teeth. Thinking we might freshen up the place next year, she said, sliding a napkin under her plate. New tile in the kitchen, lighter cabinets, something more modern. I nodded slowly. It's held up fine these past 30 years. She smiled. That's true, but homes should evolve, right, especially if changes are coming. I chewed in silence, counting the seconds between each of her glances at him. Testing, watching, gauging how far she could push. Maybe an open concept, he said. Knock out that old wall between the dining room and den. That wall was where Barbara hung our anniversary photo. I forced a small chuckle. That old wall held up more family dinners than I can count. He shrugged, just an idea. I nodded again, slow. The weight of their casual cruelty pressed against my chest more than any argument ever could. They weren't hiding anything. They simply didn't care if I noticed. After breakfast, they moved to the back porch, coffee cups in hand, murmuring and laughing. I cleared the table alone, scraping yolk off plates, rinsing the fake syrup smell from their knives. Barbara used to say you could read someone's heart by how they handled quiet moments. These two, they filled the silence with plans that erased me. I stood by the sink, hands wet, watching them through the window. Their heads leaned together, their smiles practiced. I dried my hands, walked into my study, sat down in front of the computer and opened my email. Subject line, quiet legal help. To Helen Vance. Message, Helen, if you're still doing title reviews, I need your eyes. Quiet matter. Sensitive, coffee this week. I'll bring your favorite lemon scones. I hit send. Helen had retired 2 years ago, but she still kept her legal mind sharp, and she owed me a favor or two. I returned to the kitchen, washed the last dish, a porcelain plate with a pale blue edge, the kind they don't make anymore. It was Barbara's favorite. She picked it from a market in Florence, wrapped it herself in scarves so it wouldn't break on the flight home. I dried it carefully, watched a droplet slide from the edge and fall into the sink. Outside, they laughed again. Inside, I placed the plate back on its hook, right where it belonged. The cafe hadn't changed in 20 years. Same chipped corner on the pastry case, same chalkboard specials. Helen slid into the booth across from me, trench coat still dusted with snow. I got your email, she said, setting her bag down. You look like hell. I feel worse, I muttered. She studied me. You want to tell me what's going on, Or should I just guess from the way you're gripping that envelope like it's your last meal? I slid the deed across the table. She opened it, scanning quickly. Her eyes narrowed. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship. Christ, George, did you even read this before signing? No, I admitted. My son said it would save hassle. It was 3 months after Barbara died. I was barely eating. Helen sat back. You were grieving on medication. Sleeping pills, something for the nerves. I was foggy. Her eyes locked on mine. That might be our in. I frowned. What do you mean? She tapped the paper. This clause, the survivorship one, it holds, unless we can prove you lacked full mental capacity or were under undue influence when you signed. It's buried deep, but there's a legal lever. You think it's enough? She leaned in. You have a therapist, doctor's notes, prescription history from that time. I nodded slowly. Barbara's death. I wasn't in my right mind. I kept her toothbrush in the cup for months, talked to her pillow at night. Helen's tone softened. We use that. We show that the signing was made under emotional distress. If we can support it with documentation, we can petition for deed reversal. I swallowed. What happens if it works? We dissolve the co-ownership. You regain full title control. He'll have no legal footing to sell or evict. And if it does? Her jaw tightened. Then we prepare for a long fight, but we do it smart, quiet, surgical, no fireworks yet. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Just the low hum of the espresso machine and the cold reality between us. Can you do it? I finally asked, even though you're retired. She smiled grimly. For you, I'll sharpen my knives. I exhaled for the first time in days. The tightness in my chest loosened just a bit. A flicker of something I hadn't felt since Barbara's funeral. Not peace, not yet. Control. As we stood to leave, she touched my shoulder. You're not crazy, George, just heartbroken. Let's turn that into strategy. Outside, the snow had started to melt. Slush on the pavement, the kind that seeps into your shoes. I didn't mind. I walked to my car, hands warm for once. The silence at home would feel different tonight. Not the silence of defeat. The silence of planning. The vacuum roared over the rug, its noise a comfort, mindless, steady, unlike the thoughts clawing through my skull. I bent to pick up a scrap of wrapping paper near the coffee table and noticed an envelope tucked beneath the leg. Red foil lining. Holly berries in the corner. I opened it. Merry Christmas, Derek. Let me know when you're ready to move forward with the equity application. Excited to help. Signed, Jason. Mortgage broker. Business card stapled inside. My fingers stiffened. I read it again, slower this time. They weren't just thinking about selling. They were already applying for a loan. On my house. My throat tightened. The date on the card, December 12th. That was before I'd overheard them, weeks before the whisper near the fireplace. This wasn't a whim, it was a strategy. The vacuum rattled as I dropped to the couch, card in hand. Did I raise him to be this cold, this entitled? Had I failed him as a father, or had he failed as a son? I remembered his first scraped knee, how he cried when the dog died, the way he used to fall asleep with a book on his chest like his mother. Where did that boy go? I stared at the words again. Equity application. They were counting my memories as numbers on a ledger. Barbara's garden, just square footage. The staircase we painted together, a selling point. Even my grief, they'd budgeted it into their timeline. I stood up and walked to the study, every step heavier than the last, pulled the drawer, found the manila folder I'd started with Helen, labeled House Title Review. I placed the card inside, then the business card. Then I sat and stared at the folder like it might answer back. No answer, just silence. I opened my laptop and emailed Helen. Subject: found something. Helen, I found a Christmas card from a broker, dated mid-December. They've already been applying for equity loans. I'm attaching a scan. I think it's time. Let's talk next steps. Gee. I attached the photo, hit send. My hands didn't shake this time. She responded within the hour. Perfect. This proves intent before your discovery. We file a temporary injunction first under a mental capacity review clause. It freezes action while we build reversal case. Quiet, legal, no fireworks. I replied, do it. I walked back to the living room. My son's coffee cup still sat on the table, rim stained. His laptop was open, a spreadsheet with numbers, tabs labeled presale Reno budget, agent fees, timeline, Feb list. They'd already picked the month. I didn't touch it, I just turned off the screen. Back in the study, I labeled a new folder. Sharp black ink across the front. They forgot I built this house. I slid the Christmas card in and closed the drawer without a sound. Dr. Mayers had a soft voice. Not weak, just soft, like someone who'd seen enough to know yelling rarely fixes anything. He welcomed me into a room that smelled faintly of leather and lemon oil. Books lined the shelves, real ones, with creased spines and folded corners. It didn't feel like a trap. That made it harder somehow. Tell me how this started, he said, settling into the chair across from mine. I took a deep breath. It started the night I heard my daughter-in-law whisper she was going to kick me out. After Christmas. He didn't flinch, just nodded. I explained the deed, the signatures, how I'd added my son's name to make things easier. Barbara had just passed. I was on Ambien, something for anxiety, couldn't sleep, couldn't think. You were grieving, he said gently. Grief clouds judgment. That's not weakness, it's human. I looked down at my hands. I wanted to believe they'd protect what we built, but they didn't want the house, just the value. He took notes quietly, then began the tests. Memory recall, visual cues, reflexes, patterns. I passed them all. Still sharp, still me. But when he asked me to describe how I felt during those first weeks without Barbara, my throat closed. I left her pillow untouched for 2 months, I said, blinking hard. Wouldn't let the cleaning lady touch it. He didn't rush me, just let the words come. I talked to the photo on the dresser. I poured 2 cups of tea. Silence again, safe, respectful. He tapped his pen twice. I'll write a formal evaluation. Cognitive clarity today is strong, but I'll also document the probability of impaired decision-making at the time of deed signing. You were vulnerable. It matters. When I left, the wind outside bit into my jacket. But for the first time in weeks, I felt lighter, not strong, not whole, but seen. Back home, I opened the door just in time to hear my son's voice from the dining room. Do you think we should move the old couch and hutch to storage early? He asked her. Might help with the photos. Photos? For a listing I hadn't agreed to. Oh, definitely, she replied. We can stage it with a cleaner look. Minimalist sells better. They were carving up my life in real time. I walked past them, didn't say a word, just nodded and went into the study. Printed Dr. Mayer's draft letter, slid it into the manila folder. The folder was getting heavier now. Christmas card, mortgage inquiry, deed copy, and now a professional confirmation that I hadn't been in my right mind. Let them talk about couches. Let them measure drapes. I was building something too. Not a defense. A verdict. She was already dressed when I came downstairs, heels, blazer, full makeup, not her usual yoga pants and coffee routine. She was packing near the bay window, whispering into her phone. No, we'll do neutral tones, clean lines. Photos have to be this week before he gets weird about it. I stood still in the hallway, just out of her line of sight. Before he gets weird about it. That he was me. The man still paying the property tax. She hung up quick when I stepped in. Morning, she chirped, like she hadn't just plotted another step in gutting my life. I nodded and poured myself some coffee. She grabbed her keys. "Errands," she said, "won't be long." And just like that, she was gone. That evening, I went to grab the garden shears from the garage. Their car was parked halfway in, trunk popped open. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Under a folded tarp and an old blanket was a white-hand "for sale" sign, the kind you only bring home when things are past the talking stage. I stared at it for a moment, then reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and snapped 3 photos from different angles. The sign, the agent's name, the date on the form sticking out from underneath. They weren't just thinking anymore. They were ready. I walked back inside, locked the door behind me, and sent Helen the images. Subject: it's starting. They have the sign, it's in their car. Ajay. She replied in under 5 minutes. That's enough. We file the dissolution motion tomorrow, based on cognitive state at time of deed plus demonstrated manipulation. You still have control. Let's act before they do. I wrote back with one word. Yes. That night at dinner, she served pasta and handed me a glass of wine. "You've been quiet lately," she said. "Everything okay?" I smiled, just thinking about the new year. My son grinned. "Fresh starts, huh?" I met his eyes, something like that. They had no idea what I knew. No idea that the smile on my face wasn't from the wine. It was from the legal draft sitting in Helen's inbox. We ate, laughed about nothing, and when she got up to clear the dishes, I offered to help. In that moment, I saw how much they'd already counted me out. How they thought I was too old, too soft, too tired. But I was. Not yet. I rinsed a plate, let the water run hot, and watched the soap bubble over. This time, I didn't dry it right away. I let it sit dripping. Just like the clock, I'd now started ticking. A countdown not for their listing, but for mine. They knocked on my door just after breakfast. She wore too much perfume. He had that sheepish grin he used when he was about to lie. "Hey, Dad," he said. "We were thinking it might be nice if you spent the day with Jerry. You haven't seen him in a while, right?" I set my coffee down. "Jerry." "Yeah, you know, old friend. Fresh air, some cards. We already called him, he's free." I looked at her. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Just smiled too wide. I knew what this was. They wanted me out. "I'm not feeling up for it," I said. "Bit tired." A flicker of panic crossed her face before she covered it with a shrug. "Oh well, next time." They left in a rush. I watched them from the window. She was carrying a clipboard and a set of keys that weren't hers. By noon, the house was quiet. I opened the file Helen had sent the night before. The revocation motion. Legal, clean, final. I called the notary she recommended. He was already waiting at the cafe 2 blocks over. 2 signatures. 1 fingerprint. And the machine began to turn. By 2:00 p.m., the filing was submitted to the recorder's office, revoking co-ownership on grounds of compromised mental state during the original signing, backed by a psychologist's letter, backed by the mortgage card, backed by their own carelessness. Then I called someone who still remembered what loyalty meant, an old friend of Barbara, now a local agent, honest, discreet. She came with a camera, not a pitch. We spent the next hour photographing the details no one else cared about. Barbara's wisteria vine, now coiled around the porch like memory in bloom. The carved banister she insisted we keep, even when trends changed. The pantry, where her recipe cards still sat. "I want it listed," I told her. "Today, private viewings only, no signs." She nodded, no questions. At 5:43 p.m., the property went live. Not under their name. Not under ours. Under mine. Meanwhile, the open house they had arranged, quietly scrubbed. Helen's injunction had reached the agency before the first shoe crossed the welcome mat. At 7:10 p.m., I heard the garage door rise. Laughter, footsteps. Then silence. "Did you cancel the showing?" I heard her ask. "No, you did," he replied. I stepped into the hallway. Evening. They turned toward me, faces tight. "How was Jerry?" he asked. "Didn't see him," I said. "Had some things to handle." They didn't know what yet, but they could feel it. The shift. That night, I sat alone in the living room. Fire low, lights soft. Their voices distant behind a closed door. I opened my laptop. Refreshed the listing. Views 47. Saves 12. Scheduled tour 3. They tried to sell a future without me. But I'd already sold the past they never truly owned. The tires crunched over the gravel just after noon. They pulled up laughing, something about a wine tasting from the sound of it. Her voice was loud, carefree. His was lighter than I'd heard in months. Then it stopped. The engine died, but no doors opened. I stood behind the front window, arms crossed. From where I stood, I couldn't see their faces, only the stiff pause in their bodies. Where the roses used to bloom, just left of the driveway, stood a white post. A fresh red and white sign dangled in the wind. Sold. She was the first to move. She stumbled out of the passenger side, heels wobbling on the walk. Her purse fell from her shoulder and landed with a thud. He followed, slower, pale as the curb. I stepped onto the porch, letter in hand. "George," she said, voice clipped, already rising, "what the hell is this?" He squinted at the sign like it might disappear if he blinked hard enough. "Is this a joke?" "No joke," I said. I held up the envelope. "This is a copy of the county's official decision. Deed reversal granted. Co-ownership revoked due to documented mental duress at time of signing. Sale approved in full." She stepped forward. "You can't just sell the house. That's our house too." "It was never yours," I said calmly. "You never paid a dime. You never signed a mortgage. You just smiled wide enough to cash in on grief." "But we made plans," she shouted. "We had an agent, we had a contractor lined up. You blindsided us." My son finally spoke. "Dad, come on, let's just talk about this. We didn't mean to." I cut him off. "You meant every word. We'll kick him out after Christmas, remember? You whispered it like I was furniture." His mouth opened, then closed. She stepped between us. "We'll fight this. You can't just erase us from the deed." I handed her the copy. "It's already done, signed, filed, enforced." She flipped through the pages, hands trembling. "You ambushed us," she hissed. "No," I said. "I waited, I listened. I gave you every chance to treat this house like a home. Instead, you treated it like a flip." He looked up, eyes glassy. "Where are we supposed to go?" I looked at him for a long time. "Anywhere that isn't mine." Silence stretched between us. "You'll have to be out by Thursday," I said, voice steady. "New owners take possession Friday morning." They stood frozen, framed by the porch light and the sold sign behind them. Like statues. Like shadows of people I used to know. I turned and walked back inside. Closed the door. And for the first time since Barbara died, I didn't feel like a guest in my own home. The house is smaller, but it breathes easier. Mornings here start with mist curling off the lake like steam from a quiet cup. The air doesn't carry their voices anymore. Just bird song and the soft creak of the dock as it shifts with the breeze. I brought only what mattered. Barbara's piano still tuned. A box of her books, pages yellowed, corners loved. Our wedding photo. She's smiling in it. So am I, back when the world still felt wide. The rest. Left behind. Let them pack it. Let them sell or toss whatever didn't belong to them, because none of it did. Helen's letter arrived yesterday. Typed, formal, but I read it 3 times anyway. Funds from the home sale have been placed in a revocable living trust under your sole control. No one else has access. It is airtight. You're protected. I folded it neatly and tucked it in the drawer beneath the teacups. I already knew what it said, but the confirmation, it felt like breath after drowning. I don't sit in silence out of sorrow anymore. I sit because I want to. Because peace doesn't need noise. The guest room is small. Just a bed, a lamp, and a quilt Barbara's sister made for us one Christmas. I left it untouched since she passed. Couldn't bring myself to open that door back in the old house. Too many ghosts behind it. But here it feels different. A knock at the door this morning. Light hesitant. I opened it to see my niece, the one who moved out west after her father died. She hadn't visited in years. Stood there now with a toddler on her hip and bags at her feet. Her eyes filled before she spoke. "Can we visit for a while?" I looked at her, then at the boy, her son, big-eyed and quiet. "Of course," I said, "come in." She stepped across the threshold, shoulders shaking just a little. I took the bags, showed her the guest room. The boy ran to the piano, hitting keys with tiny fingers, laughter echoing against the wooden walls. She smiled. He's never seen a piano before. I watched him play, no rhythm, just joy. And I realized something. The revenge had never been about punishing them. It was about reclaiming something. Not the house, not the money. Me. I walked outside as the sun broke across the lake. Not with fire, not with triumph. Just light. Barbara would have liked it here. Would have told me to open the windows. To play the piano. To make space for someone new. And this time I did. The guest room door stayed open. For family that still knew the meaning of the word. For mornings filled with music, not malice. There's room in my life again. For love, not betrayal. I used to think the cruelest thing was being forgotten. But it's worse when the people you love remember you and still plot against you. I was kneeling by the fireplace that night, brushing ash from the edge of the hearth, when I heard her voice, low, sharp, slicing through the quiet. "We'll kick him out after Christmas." It landed like a punch to the ribs. I didn't move, I didn't blink, just kept my back turned, hand on the iron poker. My son didn't respond right away. Then came his answer, casual as if they were deciding on a restaurant. "Yeah, we'll say it's time he got a place with support. He'll get over it." And then laughter, soft, intimate, the kind people share when they're in on something ugly. They didn't know I was right there, just a few steps away. They didn't know I'd heard everything. Or maybe they didn't care. I stayed crouched in front of the fire, eyes fixed on the embers. My fingers curled around the poker so tight I felt the metal edge press into my skin. This was my house. I built it in '87, poured concrete with my own hands, chose the beams, planted every tree outside. And after Barbara passed, every corner of this place became memory, sacred. Now it was just an asset to them, a line item. They thought they were being clever, waiting until the holidays were over, letting me light the fire, cook the roast, wrap the gifts, all while planning my eviction. I wish someone had warned me. Not about thieves or strangers, but about what happens when love turns into leverage. If anyone's listening, don't make the mistake I did. I trusted my son. When his business collapsed, I opened this home. When she lost her job, I said, "Come, stay as long as you need." Now I was just a burden with a bedroom. Later that night, I walked into the kitchen. She was rinsing wine glasses. "Lovely evening," I said. My voice didn't tremble. She smiled. "It really was. You always make the holidays so warm." I nodded. "You heading to bed soon?" "In a bit," I said, opening the pantry. "Okay, good night then," she chirped, wiping her hands. I watched her walk away like nothing had been said. The clock ticked into midnight. Christmas Day. I returned to the fireplace, knelt again. The flames had settled into a soft orange flicker. I lifted the poker, stirred the coals gently, then leaned forward and whispered, "So that's how it's going to be." I watched the last flame dance, then die. I hadn't opened the safe since Barbara died. It still smelled like her perfume somehow, or maybe that was just memory playing tricks again. The dial clicked under my fingers as I spun it left, then right, pausing with each turn like I was waiting for her voice to say, "Careful now, don't forget the middle number." When the door finally opened, I saw it, the thick envelope labeled Deed Property, yellowed a bit at the edges, still whole, still mine, or so I'd told myself. I carried it to the desk. My hands were steadier than I expected. Inside, the words stared back at me. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship. My son's name, typed in bold right beneath mine. I remembered the day I signed it. Barbara had only been gone 3 months. I was still sleeping with her robe folded on her pillow. My son had come over with soup, said he'd talked to someone smart, and that it'd be easier for everyone if we just got the paperwork sorted now, just in case something happened to me. "Probate's a mess," he'd said. "This way there's no confusion law."